Welcome back. How was lunch? Everybody now everybody's real tired. Well, it's actually real light food. It's pretty light food, so that's good. Okay. We'll let everybody file in here. So I really want to try to avoid more prolonged discussion on what this concept of mind is. Let's take a look at the other aspects of the principles, the other two of the three. So the second one is a lot easier for us to understand, I believe, which is thought. Right, so we talked about mind as let's just say we call it the universal intelligence behind life itself. There's a wisdom and an intelligence behind life. We get the sense that it's within us. We get the sense that it's within. It's what we're seeing in our world is an expression of that intelligence. The second principle is that essentially, what is thought? So I would say that intelligence or that energy behind life materializes in the form of thought within us. And as I mentioned before, thought is intrinsic to who we are. We are alive. We're thinking. Even when we're sleeping, right? We think. We have dreams. Our mind is still working. Okay. How many people have ever tuned into how busy their minds are? Anybody try to meditate? Do people ever try to kind of quiet down their head? Yeah? Pretty busy?
Yeah.
Right? I'm reminded of that Jackie Mason routine where the Jew opens up the hood of the car. He says, "Sure is busy in here." Right? So, that's kind of what you experience, right? It's sure is busy in here. Right? Now, do we control thinking?
No.
Right? Has anybody found the on-off button? Not so simple, right? Right? It comes through us. I mean, obviously, it's somehow coming from us, or it's hard to sort of know, but it's not really. We're not in the driver's seat, but we're constantly. Now, as I said before, how much of that thinking is stuff that we're aware of? They counted. There's somebody that actually put a number to how many thoughts people have during a day. I don't know who sat there and counted. Still trying to figure that out. It's probably the same guy that counts how many people show up at an event. I'm trying to figure out who that guy is too. But they said something like some ridiculous, like 60,000, or I don't know, maybe much more than that even. Just the number of thoughts that we have.
What I read was it boils down to 8 per second.
8 thoughts per second. There you go. That's a lot to keep track of. I know that I've sometimes, when I'm I've tuned in, and it's like flashes. You get it's like you get a sense there's something just pop through your head, but you can't even put your finger on it. So we're human beings. We're alive. That means we are plugged into thought. It is constantly coming. We don't order up. Now, some of our thinking is what I would call volitional. In other words, we do sometimes focus on something, and we can string some thoughts together, But I would say that's the vast minority of our thinking, right? Most of it is under the radar. We use different words for thinking, belief, is a word, for example, that we would use. People have beliefs. Well, that's thought, okay? But bottom line is, we have thought coming through us all the time. Now, the third principle, what we call consciousness, is sort of what brings the whole thing together. Because without consciousness is our ability to experience our lives. In other words, if we had thought but no consciousness, we would never experience our thinking. Okay, consciousness is what allows us to experience our thinking. But you see, we have this incredible creative gift as human beings. And that is that we bring our thinking to life. So it doesn't really feel like thinking. It feels like life. It's almost like the analogy I sometimes use is imagine sitting in a movie theater. And, you're sitting there and there's, behind you is the projector. The projector's plugged into the wall. Well, so that's sort of mind, right? We're plugged into something. That's how we're even here. If you think about the light coming through that projector, imagine if you were smoking, you smoke goes up, you see all that light streaming across the room, right? That's thought. That's like thought. And then that light hits the screen, boom, and it comes to life into a movie. That's consciousness. Consciousness is what allows us to experience our thinking and to bring that thinking to a full color experience, sense around, the whole thing, so that we really feel like we're experiencing reality. We are fabulous at doing this, whether we know we're doing it, whether we're not. This is a gift. I look at it as a gift. It's a divine gift that we have, that we human beings are the creators of our own experience. That's really what we're talking about. That every single one of us, every single moment, is doing this. And so we're literally creating our little world. So I say, when it says that we are B'Tselem Elokim, with the idea that we are in the image of God, to me, in the real essence of that, it's that we literally create our world every single moment, just as the Almighty does. Every single human being is constantly living in their own thinking that they bring to life via this thing called consciousness, and that's their world. How does that sound? How does that land on people? Yeah.
Would it be accurate to say that our consciousness gives a structure and order and meaning to our thoughts?
Well, what it does is it brings thought to life, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. In other words, not every thought we bring to life. Sometimes thought looks like a thought. That's, you ever look over and you go, jump, that's stupid. It just looks like a thought. But a lot of times it for whatever reason, we go, ooh, that's real on some level. And boom, it doesn't feel like thinking at all. Hence the dilemma of being human. It's like we're living in our own little world that we're bringing to life, and it doesn't feel like our own little world. It feels like the world, right? It feels like reality. Now, it's sometimes hard for us to see that for ourselves. Oftentimes I think, we see it sometimes a lot easier in other people, like, our kids. They'll seize on something and be completely, just completely, absorbed in it or overcome by it, and it looks to us like crazy. Like what is this, right? How can they be so emotionally, involved and wrapped up in, you didn't buy them a Hershey bar, at the checkout line, or what's so and so going to say if I come into school with the wrong color shirt, It's like that sounds a little crazy, but it's not to the next person. To the next person, that's their reality, and it doesn't feel at all like their reality. That's the challenge. It feels like the reality with a big capital R, right? Can people relate to this? Yeah.
I have a question also that shows that when I ask, but I'm not trying to judge anyone, but aren't religious people more conscious of the conscience?
I really couldn't answer that. I have no idea. Why would you suggest that they are?
I don't know, just the way people think to work on themselves a lot.
I couldn't comment on who is more conscious of consciousness, as you're saying.
Yeah.
They're more aware that they're behind their experience. My experience is it really crosses that our ignorance of that crosses all boundaries. It's the human condition.
Right, so maybe I didn't come out saying it that I wanted to. I'll work on my question on.
Maybe religious people should be more conscious. That might be possible, but yeah, I mean, what could be? I don't.
You just asked me when I said I need accountability.
Are we more accountable? Look, we're all accountable because we live in our reality. That's the ultimate accountability. I mean, we experience what we create. But it's a very powerful thing when you think about it. We are mechadish b'chol yom tamid. We literally, every single moment, are creating a world. You know what it says? Whoever saves a life, it's as if they saved an entire world. Right? So most of us think of that as it's a nice way of saying life is precious. And yes, it's true, absolutely. But I take it rather literally. What I'm suggesting is if there are 6 billion people walking around on this planet today, there are 6 billion worlds walking around on this planet. Literally. Every single human being experiences their life uniquely because they're bringing their own thinking to life and having their own unique experience. And we're suggesting that this paradigm really explains all human experience. In other words, it's a principle. Principle means it's like gravity. You know, gravity doesn't take Saturdays off at 5, right? It's like, it's constant. It's 24/7, 365, no exceptions whatsoever. Doesn't work for one person and then not work for another person, right? It is a principle. You can set your watch by it and you can rely on it. And it explains everything that has to do with, you know, bodies and how they relate to each other, okay? We're suggesting to you that this is the source of every single moment of your experience, and it's the only source of your experience. And it explains why every single human being has a different experience, or why even we, from moment to moment, can have radically different experiences. Can't we? You ever notice that?
I don't know how we can communicate.
Well, actually, I would say the other way around. That's actually why we have to communicate.
How can one understand the other if my world is unique to me?
Very good. By the way, I hold that the principles are the foundation of relationships. Good luck if you don't understand that each of us lives in our own world. And that's precisely why communication is important in a relationship. You know, because how else do I know what's going on with you? You know, and you're correct. On some level, even with communication, I don't really know what your reality is like. Isn't that true? I mean, you and I can talk about red, but do I really know that red looks the same to you as we can talk about we love that movie, but do we really, you know, can we really ever know what that experience is like for somebody else? We do the best we can, right? But there is an inevitable uniqueness to every single human being. I cannot live in your world. Does that make sense? It's the people that don't understand it that have problems in relationships, because why don't you know what I want? Why don't you know what I'm, you know, what's the matter with you? Or why don't you do it the way I do it? Right? Tzvi, you're hiding back there. Oh, no. You're come. I'm about to hand the baton off to you. I got you in trouble. Now you get out of it, right?
Technical difficulty.
Or if you're busy with something that's different, you need to work on
If I
something.
come up here, I gotta stand. I don't sit.
No, you can sit.
I was standing anyway.
You can sit. So
Keep on going. I'm enjoying this myself.
Okay. So how does that sitting with people? Is there anybody do you have any questions about that? All right. This is a very, you see, this really answers up the whole variability, I like to refer to it as the elasticity of the human experience. It's actually amazing how different things can look, even within ourselves, from moment to moment. Yeah?
And my question is, so how is it then, living by the principle, that you come over to somebody and he's in a bad mood, you say something nice to him, and that it changes his whole mood? Maybe...
Great question. Have you ever said something nice to people and it doesn't change their mood?
Yeah.
Have you ever said something nice to people and they get angry at you?
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps, yeah.
Well, I'll throw that back at you then. How is it? So you're asking, how is it that I can impact you?
Yeah.
So it's a good question. So here's the thing. I can point to something and say, hey, you know, did you ever think about it this way? And you could go, wow, I never thought about it this way before, and you could think about it that way, and it could make sense to you. But until it does, it's just me talking, right? Until you get your own insight about what I'm talking about. How many times have you had that experience where, why didn't you tell me that before? I have been, right, I've said the same thing like 30 times. Now you finally heard it, right? Because it's not me, it's great, it's working for me really well, what I see, but until you see it for yourself, then it's just my stuff, right? It can't be yours without it being part of your world. Is that helpful?
Well, it's helpful, but I want to know the next step. A person like yourself who lives by the principles. Are you affected?
We all live by the principles, that's my point. Well, you live by the principles too. That's not what separates the men from the boys here. It's who knows they are living by the principles.
Well, yeah, see, here's the cool thing about it. I mean, you asked, like he said, you're living by the principles too. And you said, do I? So he's saying that because he knows that you are, regardless of what you think. It doesn't make a difference what you think. That's what's so cool about the principles, is that once you see the principles as true, once you get awake to them, you know, whether I get to know you personally, I still know that if you're alive and having experiences, the principles are working through you perfectly. They are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having even a negative experience. If you're having an experience of some kind, it means that the principles are operating on you perfectly.
Can I just explain one thing?
Yeah.
These other paradigms, mixed paradigm, outside-in paradigm, it's not like some people live by those paradigms and others live by the inside-out paradigm. They don't really exist. We're saying they're false. They're false. You can think that that's the way life happens. And we're suggesting that if you do, that can cause some challenges. That can be challenging. And so it's helpful to understand the paradigm that I think really describes our experience. But we're not suggesting that there are options.
Yeah, and we've seen this happen before, where even though things work a certain way, people think it doesn't work that way. They think it works another way. And because they think it works a way that it doesn't, that mistake still governs their behavior. So we mentioned an example before. It's a famous example. People used to think the world was flat. Sailors, when they mapped out their journeys, seriously, it wasn't a joke. I mean, to us, it's a joke. But they seriously mapped out their trips because they misunderstood that the world was round. They thought it was flat. They believed that it was flat, and that belief governed their behavior, even though there was no way that they could sail off it. So we do the same thing. Even though we have myself is a great example. I had no clue that the principles were true. I thought, for most of my life, that there were other people that made me feel this way. And I had a nice big finger to point to them and blame them for how I was feeling. And so because I believed that it was their fault, I blamed them. And I tried to change them or get away from them based on my misunderstanding. But then that shifted. I saw that it isn't true. Now that doesn't mean I stopped blaming people. I still like to blame people. But after not too long, it's like, oh, that's not true. Shucks. I really want to blame them because that takes the onus off of me. It's good to blame people.
Yeah.
It works.
It's convenient.
It's convenient.
I'm a victim, you're a perpetrator, it's great.
But the point that we're saying, that I'm really trying to kind of bring out, is there's a way it works. There's a way that your experience shows up. Whether you know about it or not, whether I know about it or not, it's still showing up that way. Now, when I get to see that it works that way, when I'm living in reality about how my life shows up, I benefit. I blame people less. I stop feeling constricted by my circumstances. I suddenly see how hopeful life really is.
I'm
Just to
open the
name a
possibility-
couple of things.
Open to the possibility I could see something deeper or more clearly later.
That might be one, right? Or a lot more stuff. And then there are times where I forget that the principles are true. And it really is your fault in that moment. It feels like that, at least. But it's not true. I've just forgotten how it works. So that's why Reb Favi, when we when Mark says that the principles are operating on you now perfectly, or you live the principles perfectly, and you ask, do I? It's just that Mark can see that that's true. Sometimes. And that not all of us can all the time. In fact, one of the things that the principles allows us to see is the very truth of the matter that we will lose sight of the principles being the generators of our experience. The principles account for that. They allow you to be human. Don't worry, no one's going to take that away from you. They allow you to forget. In fact, they are probably what is behind your forgetting.
It's because you're so good at it. It's because we do it seamlessly. We're so good at creating our own reality, we forget we're creating it. Imagine making a movie and forgetting, and watching it and forgetting you made the movie. It's kind of like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you just added another dimension. You said it works perfectly.
That's right. Perfectly. That's right.
Another word that I learned recently is that it works precisely. It doesn't make a difference what you're thinking. It makes no difference whether it's a big fat thought or a little scrawny little thought. You're going to feel it precisely. There's no abouts, thereabouts. You're going to feel your thinking exactly what it is. And there's no exceptions, there's no estimations. Your feeling is an exact reflection of what is going on in your mind.
That's right. Perfect. Flawless. How's that feel? You can all get up now. We're already
we're done.
We're already doing it. Go on your way. Go create your lives. Yes.
Could we just say something about the thought-feeling connection? I don't know if we clarified that.
So because we bring thought to life in such a convincing way, right? The feelings are the product of that, right? Because it's precisely because, oh wow, like this is real, wow, you know. So the natural next step is it becomes really, you know, emotive to us. That's all. It's just the power of our ability to do this at such a. And by the way, when we see, when we get that glimpse, sometimes we do. We all do. Sometimes we realize, oh, you know, it's just the way I was thinking about it. All of a sudden, the emotive quality decreases or sometimes goes away altogether. We realize that was just some thinking that I had. Sometimes you have that experience. Has anybody had that experience before when you realize, I just was seeing it from a crazy perspective, and now I have some insight about it, and you realize, and there's no more, it doesn't grab you anymore, right? It's precisely because we're so fantastically good at creating, but that's the beauty of it, is nobody's broken here, and everybody's working just great. You are experiencing a perfect reflection of the way you think every moment of your life. Yeah.
Without, it's hard to say. That I hear from what you've both been saying is that there's no real goal.
We can't hear him.
We'll repeat
Yeah, we'll
his
give it.
comment.
Sorry about that. It sounds to me, though, that we talked about there's no real goal of, instead of having a goal that I should do this and I should do that, and just experience it and bring some consciousness to it. But it sounds to me now that if we could view what we've been considering to be real life experience as a product of thought, we'd be a lot better off, and then we could treat it as just my thinking.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense to you, and I think that's insightful. Yeah, there's the fact that we are aware. The fact that the question he asked was a little bit more of an observation. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mrs. Goldstein, you approve of that?
Yes.
Mrs. Goldstein approves.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your thinking and her thinking are aligned.
Separate but aligned.
There you go. Yeah. So we're suggesting exactly. We're not really here to direct you. We're here to make you, to raise your consciousness, to make something visible. That's always been going on, but it just may not have been so visible to you. And we're suggesting that increased visibility in and of itself happens to be very helpful to the overall quality of our lives and our ability to function. And we haven't fleshed all that out yet, but you had your own observation, which I think was very insightful. Yeah.
to have an observation that to me, it's more than you feel you're thinking, because to me a thought is like individual thought. To me it feels like more like, you create this whole perspective.
Well, that's why I said thought is
More than
belief,
just
too.
Thought. You create a whole picture.
What is perspective? Thought. What are beliefs? So yes, I may have a belief, like I said before, I might believe that if you ever got to really know me, you wouldn't like me, right?
Right.
Okay,
That's
so
like a
I'm not sitting there
perspective.
thinking that thought, right? I'm not even conscious that I have that thought, perhaps. I may have no clue that I actually have that, but that's a thought.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
Well, I'd like to speak to what Reuven was talking about. Do you think, it sounded like he was saying that it sounds like we're saying that all you feel is you're thinking, but it's a lot more than just thinking. It's a full-blown experience. Is that what you're saying?
I suppose, in other words, to say, you're feeling, you're thinking makes it sound easy.
Yeah.
What's the comment, all you need to do is change one thought. Your happiness is only a thought away, so to speak. It's not so simple, because it's not just a thought away, it's a whole picture away, it's a whole, everything. It's bigger than just a thought.
Yeah.
I get that. I just wanted to.
Well, yeah,
put that out.
we're not suggesting that it's simple, just change your thinking, that's correct, yes. Because as we already said, first of all, you might not even be aware of your thinking, so how can you possibly even change it? And even when you are aware of your thinking, how is it easy to just, where's that little switch that allows you to just change your thinking? Now, sometimes you do, occasionally you do, but I agree with you, yes. We're not, if that was what was coming across, then yes, thank you for clarifying that.
There's just something I want to say about this, but I feel like I'm rushed. So I don't like that feeling. I think it kind of gets in my way. So I'm going to speak a little slowly, just because that's where I'm at right now. So, sometimes there'll be a long pause, and some people take that to mean that I'm done talking, but I'm not really. Well, when we're saying that you're feeling, you're thinking, again, this is the finger pointing. What we're saying is that is the stuff of experience. So you've got the feeling of experience, and all it includes, all the good feelings, all the bad feelings, all the anger, all the angst, all the joy, all the buildings, all the smells, all the sights. It's all included. All the emotions, all the perspectives. You can just go on forever. How could you fully even describe even one moment of one experience? You really can't. But you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all of that. And it feels like it showed up in my life independent of me. So when we say that you're feeling, you're thinking, we're saying that all of that shows up for you, gets splashed into the world that you get to see and experience as a result of thought turning into a full-blown experience. Like you open up a book and a pop-up, like one of those pop-up books. You're not feeling the world. You're feeling your own thinking. You're not seeing the world. You're seeing your own thinking. You're not even remembering the world. You're remembering, you're just having the experience of memory through thought. Thought shows up, and consciousness is like is what gives it a 3D experience. It's like a flat glove. Consciousness comes along and gives it, like, puts your hand in it. Now you've got
Fills it out.
fills it out. Now, I don't know about you, but that's kind of mind-tingling when you think, for at least the first time I heard it. Like, what? That's not real there? Feels real without me having anything to do with it. You start pinching yourself on just thought. I mean, that's how powerful consciousness is that it creates the five senses. Your five senses are worthless until they are informed by thought. It doesn't work this way. Like we said before, it doesn't work outside in. It works inside out. And I'm not just talking about how, whether it's a nice day or not. I'm talking about everything that's in your world. All of it is a reflection of thought. Now, directionally, that's very different than feeling the world. Instead of it being, it's out there, it's coming from the inside out. So even if you can't fully understand what I'm saying, but maybe at least you can pick up on the direction of it and what I'm including in that direction. I'm including really, literally, if you can think of it, I'm including it. Everything.
Yeah.
When we say inside out, how do we then account for the stimulus of the outside that causes me to, whatever that means, causes me to think about that a certain way?
So there's a reality. We're not here to tell you there's no reality. We're just here to tell you that you can never experience it as it is. Kind of what physics says today. We're kind of speaking it on a second. Look, we know this to be true. I mean, we know this as Yidden, we know this to be true for sure. I mean, what's the ultimate reality? It's called the Shema. Is that not the statement of the ultimate reality for a Jew? Hashem Echad? Do we know something about that? Ultimately, no. It's unknowable. What is this?
It's your hand.
Yeah, it's my hand. Right? What is it really though? You know it's mostly empty space? On a scientific level, this is mostly electrons. Okay? I mean, we know this. This isn't something that really goes against our experience. We're just suggesting, absolutely, there's a world out there. Hashem is out there. But we're not going to see Hashem. We're going to experience our experience of Hashem. And that is inevitable. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't experience Hashem as he truly is. So I think that includes us as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I mean...
I'd like to add one thing to that, if you can, if I could. You've got, you're troubled by something. Sounds nice what we're saying, maybe. But, come on, there are certain things that can get you. There are certain outside stimuli that get you. They've published studies on this stuff, haven't they?
Well,
So
I don't know what you mean by get me.
well, what I mean is that aren't there outside things that can influence me? What about the stimuli? What about
Meaning that
Pavlov? What
if I
about...
walk into a freezer,
You're gonna feel cold.
I'm gonna feel cold, yeah.
Right. And we can take, if we had the rest of our life, and I mean, I got time if you do, we can take any circumstance where you would insist that anyone in that circumstance would feel this way. You walk into a freezer, you're going to feel cold. We could debate that. There are many different people who feel varying degrees of cold. Some people aren't bothered by the cold. They don't wear a coat. And that to them, getting sick anyway is just a matter of having a weak immune system. Cold doesn't make you sick. I'm strong. I don't need a coat. I eat right. I sleep right.
I'll give an example. You guys feel the seat underneath you?
Yeah.
Did you feel it before I said it? No, it wasn't part of your experience, was it? As far as your experience was concerned, it didn't exist. Until there's some element of thought involved. Now that's a pretty cold, hard reality, the seat you're sitting on. We're not going to have a philosophical debate about whether it exists or not, but in your world it didn't. Until I mentioned it.
Didn't exist.
In your experience, it's as if it wasn't there. I mean, I live on Rainier Avenue in Seattle. I mean, and I drive like a New Yorker. I'm a little bit crazy. So I'm usually very intense. But one day I was a passenger. I drove down this road 12 years. I'm sitting there as a passenger one day and I'm looking at the street and I'm like, there was a whole bunch of stuff I never knew existed. 12 years. In my reality, it didn't exist. As far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not saying it didn't exist. But we're talking about your experience. We're talking about your experience not objective reality. Objective reality is wonderful. It's just not for you or I.
Just the playing board, the playing field. It's just, but I'm not aware of it all.
That, if it doesn't come through you, if it's not, as far as your experience, it's not even there. Even really, truly physical things. I had a very powerful experience I'll share with you. I was once running to take the garbage out before I was going to head off to work, and somebody had thrown a broken wine glass in, and I'm pushing. And yeah, I always get that response. So anyway, I was, it was like really painful, and I ran in and I put like a butterfly strip on or something, but it was like in your hand, like there's no way to like avoid this becoming an issue. So I remember I had this thought, this is really gonna, because it hurt. I was like, this is really gonna hurt all day. I mean, this is really gonna cramp my style today. So but I had to run, so I start driving, and being the passionate New York driver that I am, I realized all of a sudden I had forgotten about my hand. So all of a sudden I realized, oh, I totally forgot about my hand. And of course, what happened? It started to hurt again. Oh, interesting. So I keep driving, and it happens again. It happened like 3 times, and I realized, even that's thought. And you know what was amazing? It stopped hurting, and it was healed by the next day. I don't understand that part. Don't try this at home. I'm just saying, I'm trying to share with you, that's pretty darn, I once asked my dentist, do there are people that come in here and have you fill their teeth without anesthesia? And he says, yes. No, there's no way they're in as much pain as I would be, because they would not be doing that. I mean, I give my name, rank, and serial number right away. I mean, when I see that drill. So these, for them, it's. I mean, you can't get much more physical and real, right? Like that. There's a stimuli a dental drill, Did you hear it?
But they must probably hypnotize themselves or something.
Yeah.
If you talk about transcending your own reality, does that fit with this, or is that slightly different? In other words, is there a subtle difference between someone transcending his reality and someone just experiencing that reality differently? Are you trying to get away from the concept of transcending, or is that a relevant concept?
Well, we haven't gotten into it yet.
Oh, okay.
But right now, what we've been doing is describing how it showed up in the first place. Right. So after we found what showed up in the first place, people are very busy trying to change it, change their thought, change the world, transcend, whatever it might be. We haven't gotten into that at all. It's my understanding that as this gets clearer to you about how it shows up in the first place, you'll have a completely different opinion about how transcendence occurs. And that it has a lot less to do with me than I thought. A lot less. Can you guys start to see, are you starting to get a sense of, forget about whether it's going to make you feel better, but that this might be a different way than how you used to understand how your world is showing up? And that if it's true that the world that you see shows up from within you might have some implications as opposed to it being a world that shows up from the outside in?
Can you rephrase the question?
Okay, that was a complicated way.
Okay.
Let's say you are traveling to California and someone gave you directions that really took you to Detroit. But on the top of the page it said, California. But you're studious and you're going to follow the directions. And so you're following the directions to California. And someone came along and said, no, those are not the directions to California. Those are the directions to Detroit. would there be any implications for you if someone said that to you? What might you stop doing?
Driving.
You'd stop driving. Once you realize the direction, the map you had was faulty, you're gonna throw it out. You're not gonna rely on it anymore, right? It's the directions to Detroit. I want to get to California. That's the benefit of the principles. It's that if you've been using a map that does not include thought in the moment as being the catalyst for your experience, then you've been using a faulty map.
Not gonna get you to where you wanna go.
It's not going to get you where you want to go. And if you try to use that map, you're going to come to Detroit and start talking to people about surfing, and they're going to look at you funny. That's no good.
Surfing on Lake Michigan, whatever it was.
Surfing on the pavement. They got a lot of pavement in
Some lake
Detroit.
over there. We're trying to make this real simple. That's the beauty of it. I mean, that's what appeals to me, is it really is very simple. Look for simplicity.
The wrong map, what does that translate to, using the wrong map?
Wrong
Does
paradigm.
that mean we're making a mistake in our thinking?
No.
No?
Well, let me just take a shot at this, yeah? You have a philosophy about how you think your feelings show up. Everyone does. Why did you feel a little tired yesterday? Why did you feel a little angry? Why did you feel a little happy? Everyone's got a philosophy. You have yours. I have mine. If you believe that your feelings showed up because of that lamed over there, right? There's a lamed there. That's a lamed. Right? If that's your map,
Not gonna get me anyplace.
it's not going to get you anyplace because it's not true. Now, if you believe, even one time, that the way you felt was because of your partner, that was the reason why you felt the way that you felt, well, that's not true. It isn't true. Now, would that be beneficial for maybe a couple of couples? I don't know about all couples, but some couples, maybe.
To correct their thinking.
I
Well,
want to rephrase what you said a little. It'll get you somewhere, but it'll sure be confusing.
Yeah, if
It'll
you're
get you to
busy with
Detroit.
the map that says, my spouse is responsible for how I feel, my spouse causes me to feel this way, and they're responsible to make me feel this way, well, that's a map
And
that...
they need to change.
And they need to change, or I have to wait here patiently. I'm waiting for you to change so that I can feel good. Well, that's going to be one type of life. And you can live that life, but it's rooted in a falsehood. The falsehood
A false
is...
belief.
It's a false belief, and the false belief is that your spouse has the power to make you feel one way or another without your thought being involved. They could make you feel a certain way, but only through your thoughts,
In which case, it's not them.
in which case it's not them.
Yeah.
Now that's a different map than you're making me feel this way. That's a different map. So that's going to get you to a different country. Not only is it going to get you to a different country, the journey is going to be completely different. So imagine it's like instead of driving in a Chevy, you're going to be driving in a Lexus. Right? It's kind of that different. It's a completely different journey of life when you are living with an understanding of how it truly works. If you're a ship captain and you know that the world is round, you don't have to worry about sailing off the edge. That's off your mind. That's obsolete. You don't have to worry about it. When you know that your feelings in the moment are generated through your own mind, through thought, through consciousness, through God, that takes off your mind, just for starters, blame. Blame will never, when you can see this, in those moments that you can see the principles as true, blame will never seem like a rational thing to do. It just won't. Not because you work on it, it just will look kind of silly. It just looks silly.
Yeah.
How do you explain a person who many people think that he's irritable?
Okay.
Or
Very simple. We tend to think about a lot of things similarly. But there'll be the one person, like their mother, who thinks they're the sweetest thing on the planet, and she'll prove the principles. You understand that?
I was always fascinated by that, actually. Yeah.
Well,
That,
good.
that your mother thought so highly of you? No kidding. I couldn't help it. You set it up.
It doesn't change the fact that we tend to think similar about things. Most of us, if we thought we had $1,000 in our bank account, we only had 50, we tend to think similarly. We like more money, you know. We like $1,000 rather than 50, you know. So, mazel tov. But then there's somebody who doesn't care. So it doesn't change the fact. So just the fact that we tend to think similarly doesn't have any impact on what we're saying. It's still thought that creates our reality.
Do you know what else it creates? It creates disappointment. It creates expectation. It creates
Every other emotion under the sun.
all the problems that we experience are rooted, based in, born of thought. All of it. All of it. So someone who can see that that's true, instead of asking what's wrong with you, they begin asking naturally, not because they work on it, but naturally they begin asking, what am I thinking that I'm feeling this way? That's also a different type of life than someone who's sitting waiting for someone else to change so they can feel better. You suddenly have a path to look down where change may be, or freedom. You have a freedom that may not have been there.
Yeah. I call it the keys to the prison. This is the keys. This is the keys to the prison. What the principles has brought to me, one of the many wonderful benefits, is the realization that I could have a very different experience of something at any given moment. It's like the weather in Seattle. Give me 5 minutes, it'll change, right? It's just, I used to feel locked in. I used to feel, well, until you change your behavior, I'm going to feel resentful. You know, basically, even if I didn't think it clearly that way, that was my paradigm. That was my paradigm. How could I feel any different about this? I mean, if someone screamed at you, I get this all the time. You know, how else could I take that? Right? It's so obvious, right? Well, that's a prison. That's a prison. That's the prison of outside in. Okay. So now it's all of a sudden I realize, whoa, you know something? And this is the simplicity of it. My experience of any given thing has absolutely nothing to do with that thing. And it's a chazal. It's a beferish chazal. It's a beautiful Pirkei Avos, Ben Zoma, the first chapter in the 4th mission of Pirkei Avos. Ezehu Ashir. Right? Somech bechelko. What is he saying? Is he not saying that your experience of wealth has absolutely nothing to do with what you do or do not have? Right? It's how you think about what you have. I've seen people that have more money than I could ever dream of having, that worry all day about money. And somebody else who has no money, who feels totally satisfied, fulfilled, and secure. Exactly. So that's what I mean by the keys to the prison. It's like all of a sudden, there's nothing out there that determines how I'm doing, by definition. Just the way I think about it. And since my thinking is changing all the time, who knows how I'm going to feel about something.
Yeah, my question for you is, this theory that I'm happy no matter what, and what is outside doesn't affect my happiness.
That's not what I said.
No?
No. I am not happy no matter what.
Okay, so the outside is not my experience. I have my own experience, and I could have $50 in a bank account and be satisfied. Right?
Awesome. Absolutely.
How do you combine this with the desire that we all need, to achieve certain things to thrive? Like you were saying before with The Secret, that this is something that motivates people, their ego and the desire and all that, right?
People mistranslate the Pirkei Avos. They say one who's satisfied with what they have. That's not what it says. It says one who takes pleasure. You're allowed to want more. But I would suggest that if you want more because you think it's going to make you happy, you might be fooling yourself. There are other reasons to want things. Believe it or not, happiness is not the end result of life, as far as not the goal of life.
What I'm trying to say is, what is our motivation to change our outside circumstances and situation if we have the ability of, having our own experience, our own peace of mind, no matter what the outside is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, in other words, I can be a happy sloth, so why should I achieve anything? I can be a happy sloth. And there are people like that. There are people who just don't have a lot of ambition in life, they're happy doing, whatever they do, and they could, it's possible that, that they have a certain amount of satisfaction. But like I'm suggesting, maybe you want more than just to be happy. Maybe you want to accomplish something that's meaningful.
I generally wouldn't say, and we have to take a break, so I'm just going to give you a quick snippet, and I'm telling you an answer to this question because I've had this question, and I'm going to tell you what the answer was that we came up with then. So it isn't coming to me now. I'm just remembering it now. You're now inviting yourself to re-examine why do you aspire to anything. If it isn't what controls or is the source of my feeling. Like I could be just as happy having nothing. Like it's possible. So why else? Is there any other reason to do stuff? Why else do we do stuff? If it's not so that I can feel better. Could there be another reason? And what might you find if you look at that? Now I found something. But it's kind of religious.
Is that allowed?
It's allowed.
Okay.
You're free to think however you like.
And what I found was, what if you did stuff because the truth is that God exists and He said so, and that you have a relationship with Him, and that you want to honor that, not so that you could feel better, because God said so, and He's God, so He can do that. Now, of course, you can get deeper than that, but you can find something better that works for you. But the main point here is that what if you found a new freedom to do stuff without having to do it so that you can feel better? Like, what if you did Torah mitzvahs not so that you could feel good about yourself?
What do we call doing Torah mitzvahs so you can feel good about yourself? Lo lishma.
Lo lishma. Well, we can go further on this. This time we have a snack. It is available this time. And I want you guys to
Are we
take care
done
of it.
already?
We at 3:15. At 3:15 we have the Rosenblatt. So when you come in, just turn your chairs around and face the screen there, and they should be there hopefully if it all works. And so 3:15. So go get that snack. I think it's downstairs. Or right, Betty? Is it downstairs?
I haven't checked.
We hope.
Should be.
And we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes.